Thank you, Governor. I feel like I wouldn't be doing my duty if I didn't remind people of the importance of social distancing in all things. We are incredibly appreciative. I was up in Boone County yesterday, and we did 11,000 tests last Tuesday. We averaged 8,250 last week. And so that's just paramount to helping us keep people safe. Can't thank the people enough who came out and were being tested as I talked to them. They're so incredibly appreciative that the governor has initiated this. The common term I heard was peace of mind, that it gave people peace of mind in case they had a loved one who was high risk or they had been around someone. Can't thank the National Guard enough. We had 60 members there in the local health department, and as you know, we'll finish that up on Friday. But as we do our testing, we feel that is essential to our mission to keep people safe. We now have more than 20 labs in Missouri that are doing the testing. We have the capacity now to do 11,000 a day. And so, again, just our essential mission every day we get up in all things and all ways, and in social distancing, is to keep people safe. So be glad to answer any questions, Kelly. Thank you.
All right, again, thanks everybody for being here. Let me start off. We're going to talk about the civil unrest today. I'm sure a lot of you is going to be having questions on that anyhow. Let me just start off with George Floyd again. Let me also start off with a retired St. Louis police officer that was killed by looters for working at a pawn shop. Let me also start off about 4 law enforcement officers that were shot last night, along with a number of other people that were shot last night across the state of Missouri. We have to change our ways of this society. George Floyd should have never died the way he died. He should not. It wasn't acceptable for what the officers done, and they need to be held accountable for that, is what happened. Nor should that retired police officer that died last night. The people that shot him should be accountable. And no, they're not protesters. They're criminals and they're thugs. And they need to be held accountable. And hopefully they get hunted down for the people that done that for last night. Because it has nothing to do with protesting, has nothing to do with George Floyd. It has to do with criminal behavior. Today I went to St. Louis, unannounced, not up there for the media's sake, for I wanted to go up there as governor, and I wanted to talk to the people I knew that was on the ground that I built relationships with since I've been governor. Part of that was the clergy leaders in that region. Many of them were there. There was legislators there, senators, representatives were there that I wanted to talk to. Chief Hayden was there at the conversation. Members of the Urban League, I went to the Urban League, talked to them, and said we've got to find a solution to the behavior that's going on in the state of Missouri. It has to stop. And there has to be a difference between protesters being legally out there protesting and criminals disguised under the umbrella of a protest. Has got to stop. Everyone has a right to peacefully protest. Nonviolent protest, I might add. I've called out the National Guard, and we're going to strengthen up the National Guard. And we're not going to have police officers. We're not going to have citizens of Missouri being shot in our streets in this state. And we're going to put an end to it. With whatever forces I have as governor of the state of Missouri, whether that's every member of the Highway Patrol, whether it's every member of the National Guard, I will call them all out to stop the violence in this state. We're not going to burn people's businesses down. We're not going to be shooting innocent people under the umbrella of a protest. The people that want to protest, they need to protest. And when that protest is over, they need to go home. And leave the people that wants to be criminals, you leave them there, and we'll take care of that. Whether it's through law enforcement, through whatever services I have and whatever ability I have to take care of those people. We will do. I was on a conversation with Congressman Cleaver earlier today, and he talked about Martin Luther King, about Dr. King, and he was with him during those times of when they protested and how they did it and why they did it. It was kind of interesting because he talked about when they protested in the daylight. They wanted people to see them. They wanted people, the media, to know they were out there. And they wanted to have people be able to march. They didn't hide under the darkness, under the covers of darkness to commit crimes. They did not. And this needs to come to an end. And there's no better place in the state of Missouri to make it come to an end, because we're not going to allow people to be shot and killed in this state. I'll use every resource I have to put an end to it. And for people that want to demonstrate and they want to tear up property, they want to throw bricks and they want to throw rocks at officers, those officers have got families too, just like the victims we're talking about, just like George Floyd had a family. But law and order has to take place in this country for us all to survive. And we will commit to the local law enforcement. I will give them all the resources I can possibly give them as a state, from the governor of the state of Missouri. I will do that because I'm not going to put up with total chaos in this state. We're better than that. We're better than that as citizens of Missouri. And we all need to take a little accountability. And I don't care whether you're an elected official, whether you're an everyday citizen, whether you're a mom, whether you're a grandma, whoever you might be. You need to start standing up and protecting one another and not engage and not trying to create chaos and commit criminal activities. And they're really trying to change a cause that definitely needs to be changed. Things need to be done different in society. We need to address issues that the African American community have, but not through violence, not through what we're seeing out there on the streets. I've instructed General Compton, who's traveled with me and been in contact with him all over the weekend, to call out the Guard. And we'll call up the Guard. We'll call up over 1,000 troops that we'll be calling up for duty. Director Karsten is also the Director of Public Service, knows that all her resources are available to put an end to this violence. Colonel Olson of the Highway Patrol knows his instructors. Wherever the town is, wherever the location is, we're going to be there. And whatever it takes, we're going to put an end to this here in this state. We've seen all we need to see. The everyday people of this state are not for violence. And for people that instigate that, we need to kind of call them out also. All of us need to do that to put an end to this. So Director Carson's here, Colonel and General Compton's here today that's going to have a few words to say, and they'll be able to answer a few questions also. So let me turn it over first to Director Karsten.
Thank you, Governor Parson, and good afternoon, everyone. Today, I received a statement released by the Missouri Police Chiefs Association, and it said that George Floyd's killing represents the degradation of what the law enforcement profession stands for. There is no law enforcement academy that teaches that type of conduct. There's no law enforcement agency that would tolerate it, and Americans will and should not accept it. We agree that free speech should be practiced and allowed. We agree that peaceful and safe demonstrations should occur. And we agree that we must highlight the calling of injustices in our nation. That's why, at the direction of Governor Parson, the Missouri State Highway Patrol and the Missouri National Guard have been assisting local law enforcement partners across the state. We're committed to providing a safe environment for demonstrators to deliver their messages and to march safely. Last night, the Missouri State Highway Patrol assisted local authorities in St. Louis, in Springfield, in Jefferson City, and in other areas across the state. The assistance that was provided and the posture our agencies take depend entirely on the environment they encounter. Last night, I was in Jefferson City as the patrol, the Missouri National Guard, the Cole County Sheriff's Department, the Missouri Capitol Police, the Jefferson City Police Department, the Lincoln University Public Safety Department, the Columbia Police Department, the Missouri State Park Rangers, and the Missouri State Conservation Agents assisted with the rally and the march that originated and ended on the Capitol grounds. As I interacted with the demonstrators, they were vocal, but they were peaceful. Some taunted the officers they encountered, but they were exercising their free speech. We respect and support and protect that right. That's our job. But there's a difference between those who advocate for change and those who agitate to create chaos. There is a difference between demonstrators and rioters and looters. When an assembly becomes violent and the safety and security are destroyed, our job must be to protect businesses, citizens, and the property that are endangered because of that. This past week, we witnessed in Kansas City, in St. Louis, in Minneapolis, and other American cities, the terrible destruction that can be done when vandals and criminals hijack demonstrations and corrupt the peaceful calls to expand justice in our nation. In St. Louis, last night, a peaceful protest turned to nighttime violence, with fires, destruction, and looting. 4 St. Louis Metropolitan Police Department officers were shot, and countless others were shot at, including one Missouri State Trooper who had a bullet enter his vehicle and strike the riot helmet he was wearing as he was driving to respond in downtown St. Louis. These officers are doing dangerous work, and we owe them our support and our prayers during this time. After talking with the clergy today and the demonstrators last night, as well as community leaders in Kansas City and St. Louis, I firmly believe 99% of all of us do not want to see this violence and destruction in our communities. In fact, last night, there were demonstrators who were handing out water bottles to everyone. There was one that handed me a sign, and he said, "I'm not here to cause problems." And his sign read, "No violence, stop hatred." So we're all in this together, and we believe there are good people out there who want their voices heard, but their voices are being deafened by those with criminal intent. We will continue to work with all of those who seek to build up their communities and not tear them down. We will continue providing assistance to law enforcement and to our communities across the state to address this situation. Again, I say our officers, our deputies, our agents, our soldiers are doing dangerous work, and we owe them our support and our prayers. And with that, I thank you, and I wish you to stay healthy and safe.
Thank you, Sandy. Thank you for what the Highway Patrol, is doing. I know Colonel Olson's not here, but I really appreciate that. Next, General Compton is going to come up here. He'll be able to answer a few questions for you and kind of tell you the strategy of the Guard, what his plans are, and what our plans are as the state of Missouri. General?
Hey, thanks, Governor. Always appreciate an opportunity to talk about your Missouri National Guard and what we have underway. Hey, so we still have, we have 2 big efforts underway right now. We still remain deeply engaged in the COVID-19 effort. Our main priority on that today is the testing effort that we've talked about over the last few weeks. And that's going along very well. But frankly, what I wanted to talk to you about today is our effort in the civil unrest that the Governor and the Director Karsten has just spoken to. Hey, our Guard, your Missouri National Guard, is out there across the state, mobilized as the Governor directed last Saturday to support the Missouri State Highway Patrol and the local law enforcement. Missouri citizens can feel very good that your Guard is out providing a unified and coordinated response to ensure, as the Director spoke to, peaceful, nonviolent protest. The Guard is in support of the Highway Patrol, and that response is then further coordinated with the local law enforcement officials across the state to provide a strong, unified committed response. I want to thank the Governor, the state, specifically the Highway Patrol today, and the DPS, Director Karsten, for their efforts and the Governor's leadership in bringing the team together. I know as we work together from the state and the local leadership levels, we're making big commitments to ensure that that peaceful, nonviolent protests can occur. But we're going to protect the safety of Missourians and the property. And we'll come through this stronger together, taking care of each other. As always, show me strong. Thank you.
Thank you, General. I know we're doing this a little bit. If you ask questions of the General or the Director, we'll be glad to switch back and forth a little bit today on that. The other thing I do want to mention, when I did have the meetings in St. Louis, we did meet with some of the young activists that was up there. I did agree to sit down with them and have some meetings with them about trying to see how we move forward. We'll set that up so you all can hold me to that I agreed to do that today up there. I also talked to the senators and some at the Urban League, wanted to be able to have a roundtable discussion to talk about real policy change, to do some things, that we will plan to do that. I will committed to that today, and we'll do that to meet those commitments that I agreed to today. So with that, Kelly, we'll go to questions.
Governor, as you said today, you're willing to use your powers to crack down on these looters and rioters, but what specific actions are you willing to take to address the entire reason for these protests, the systematic issues between people of color and law enforcement?
Yeah, just what I just told you a while ago. We talked about those things today to make agreements to sit down at the table and come up with real solutions to try to figure out how we can change things. That has to be part of moving forward. It has to. But you have to do two things. One, you got to stop the criminal activity first before you do anything, and then you're going to have to sit down there and find a plan that everybody's sitting at the table and has input into to see how we change society. And I'll make a perfect example of that. Since I've been governor, there's over 31,000 people that was incarcerated in Missouri prisons. Today there's like a little over 25 to 26,000 because of reforms we've done. A lot of that was African American that was in there, or African American women that were in there, making real changes that make a difference. And again, that goes back to working with some of the African American community in St. Louis. We'll continue to do that. You got to keep doing it. This is not going to be a simple solution.
When you sat down with the young activists today, did you come up with any solutions? Did you talk about any policy changes specifically? You
know, right now, no, we did not. We agreed to sit down at a table to have a meeting to come up with a plan of how we're going to address things and issue. Right now, the one thing we all agree on, you got to stop the violence. That's the main thing we need to be talking about right now, that everybody in the rooms, at every location I said, they all that I talked to are in agreement. Once this legal protest is over, then the crime and the violence needs to stop. Everybody's in agreement with that.
Would you...
It's been a month since you reopened the state. What are your thoughts looking back?
Yeah, I think it's good. I think we're trying to move forward. Which is a good point. One of the things we also talked about up there today, the clergy, that some of them, one of the bishops up there, I believe, was very concerned that people were forgetting about COVID-19 with everything else that was going on. COVID-19 is still out there, still concerns about it. Even all these groups you're having right now. That ought to be a focus that we should all be talking about, the risks that we still have. COVID-19 is still out there, and we got to deal with it. So there's definitely a risk when these protesters are out there in a close area they're at. It's still there. We got to deal with it. So I would ask everybody to kind of keep that in mind moving forward. And again, we're going to do everything within our powers that we can to make sure people get tested, to make sure people are aware of that. I keep saying that all the time. But good question.
Governor Parson, what's your message to the people that you call the thugs, the looters in St. Louis? What's your message to get to them?
Well, they're criminals. They need to be held accountable for it. Just like that police officer in Minnesota. He needs to be held accountable for his act. You don't get to go out and commit crime because you're upset at something. If you take away the rule of law for all of us, our society will fold in a second if you don't keep law and order in there, and you have to do that. So all I'm telling you, looters and criminals, you get what you deserve sometimes, and I hope they get caught, and I hope they're prosecuted. And nobody makes excuses for them. And especially, I would say this on my own self, this is me personally talking, if you're from out of state and you're coming to this state to commit crimes, I hope if there's any way to throw the book at them, we throw the book at them. They ought to be prosecuted to the highest elements of the law.
Governor, do we know any more about the source of these attacks? Some people feel that this is more orchestrated than random. Is there something or a source for where this is coming from?
Yeah, much more, much more. I think if you go back to the Ferguson riots, a totally different game plan that was taking place then versus today. This is much more organized, and I'm sure we're looking at that now. I know the FBI is looking into it. We're looking at it on the state level. Through all the resources we have. But this is organized crime is what it is. And when all of a sudden you've seen pallets of bricks show up or pallets of blocks that show up, you're having a strategy where dumpsters are, where you pull them out and you set them on fire. They know to try to burn police cars because it gets more of the media coverage on that. And their main focus is try to get to the police stations or the law so they can disrupt the services there. So, yeah, this is an organized effort. I mean, they have a plan of how they do sweeps. They have a plan of how they attack police officers. This is totally organized. This is not like it was in Ferguson 4 or 5 years ago.
Hi, Director.
Hi, Phil.
There's been a lot of attention paid nationally to the use of tear gas and rubber projectiles and marker rounds to disperse crowds. In some cases, they've hit people in doorways, in their homes, things like that. Can you kind of talk about what how are those decisions made of when and how to disperse crowds or how to deploy those type of tools?
Those are made by commanders on the scene, observing what's taking place. And once an unlawful activity has occurred, the commander has the option to take further action and elevate that up to and including a use of chemical munitions. I will tell you that Kansas City, as well as other agencies that I've observed, take great steps to avoid doing that. But when forced into the situation after having provided many warnings, they will take action.
And is there any kind of post-deployment scrutiny of the use of those things akin to when lethal force is used?
There are after-action reviews on some of these activities, and many agencies will conduct a debriefing afterwards.
Thank you.
Is there any number of how many people have been arrested across the state, either if it's just kind of an estimate or some sort of round number for how many people have been arrested for rioting or looting?
I don't have that number. I know that last night Kansas City had 20 arrests for different violations in their chaos that occurred. We got to remember the safety of people. And in Columbia, we had a woman that was struck by a car because of protesters that were in the street blocking that. So, got to keep those things in mind too.
And just to mention that Missouri State Highway Patrol trooper that you talked about in downtown St. Louis, you didn't mention his condition. Was he all right?
Yes, he's all right. He was not struck by the bullet. His helmet was struck by the bullet that he was wearing.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you.
All right, thank you, Director.
President Trump has suggested bringing in military and U.S. force. How would that work? Would that be well received at this time?
No, not the military force that I think you're referring to. The governor has the full Missouri National Guard at his disposal, right? He is our commander-in-chief. And what Missouri citizens ought to take great assured comfort in is that your Missouri Guard is ready. And there's over 10,000 troops ready to provide, again, a coordinated, unified response to our highway patrol and our local law enforcement entities to deal with the issue at hand. I might add, we appreciate the president's approach in the fact that he supports downplaying the civil unrest. He doesn't appreciate it either. Thank you.
Yeah, let me just finish up here. And some people will probably say, well, he's too harsh, he's saying things. But let me just tell you from experience that I've went through. I've lost an officer in the line of duty when I was sheriff. I had one shot 6 times and survived. Still in law enforcement today. I had a brother-in-law that lost his life as an EMT work in an accident. I've worked more homicides than I care to remember, to be right honest about it. And I do know this, whether you're white, black, whatever color your skin is, life is precious to everyone. And when it gets ended in tragedy, when it gets ended in violence, it is not who we are as Missourians. It's not who we are as Americans. And we all have to address this issue to stop it, because all of us deserve a chance, no matter where you live, no matter what color your skin is, and we're all accountable for our actions when we don't abide by the law. Thank you all very much. Thank you.